The cold steel handcuffs tightened too much around Judge Vanessa Hayes' wrists. She winced but refused to let them see her discomfort. Standing over her with smug grins and silent amusement were two officers, Detectives Ryan Garrett Whitmore and Greg Owen Mercer. This wasn't the first time they abused their power, but it might be the last. They just didn't know it yet. Resisting arrest, disturbing the peace, Garrett Whitmore sneered as he reached for a blank report, ready to pile on more fabricated charges. "How about public disorder?" "That sounds fitting, doesn't it, Owen Mercer?" "Sounds good to me," Owen Mercer replied, pulling out his notepad. "Might as well throw an obstruction of justice too. She sure talks a lot." Vanessa remained still. Talks a lot, that was always what they called her. They had no idea who they were dealing with. With a single word she could bring them to their knees. But she wanted to see how far they would go. For years she had fought cases just like this, innocent black men and women thrown into jail by officers like them. Their fates sealed before they even set foot in a courtroom. And now, here she was, the one in cuffs. It had all started just 15 minutes earlier. She had stepped out of Willow Oak Cafe, a small yet upscale breakfast spot near the courthouse, when the two officers stopped her on the sidewalk. "You match the description of a suspect," Garrett Whitmore said. "Suspect?" She raised an eyebrow. Owen Mercer folded his arms. "Yeah. A woman fitting your build was seen breaking into a jewelry store about an hour ago." Vanessa looked down at her navy blue judge's robe, still draped over her from the morning's court session. A jewelry thief dressed like this. She nearly laughed at the absurdity. "I see," she said calmly. "And who gave you that description?" They didn't answer. Instead, they ordered her to cooperate, which of course meant unquestioning submission. When she challenged their baseless accusation, they escalated the situation. Out came the cuffs. Now, leaning against the patrol car, Vanessa silently watched as they scribbled down their lies. The metal bit into her wrists, but she kept her composure. They wanted her to be angry. She wouldn't give them the satisfaction. "Tough luck today," Owen Mercer smirked. "Would have been easier if you played along." But Vanessa wasn't here to make things easy. As they continued fabricating charges, she memorized every violation. They weren't just making a mistake, they were ruining their own careers. Sitting in the back of the police car, she listened to the rustling of paperwork. False reports. Owen turned around, smirking. "Got nothing to say now?" Vanessa remained calm. "I'm just wondering how you plan to explain when you realize you've arrested the wrong person." Garrett Whitmore scoffed. "The system's not on your side. We know how to bend the truth." But Vanessa knew something they didn't, as she was one of the most powerful judges in the country. And by the time they figured that out, it would be too late. The car suddenly veered into a dark alley. Vanessa frowned. "We're going the wrong way." Garrett clicked his tongue. "You're under arrest. You don't get to ask questions." Her heart pounded as Owen made a call. "We got her. We'll teach her a lesson before we take her in." The cold wind rushed in as the door swung open. Owen ordered, "Get out." Vanessa took a deep breath. This wasn't an arrest, it was intimidation. But they had just made the biggest mistake of their lives. She was yanked out of the car, but she stood tall. Garrett Whitmore crossed his arms, smirking with contempt. "Resisting officers can get real bad," Owen Mercer taunted, stepping closer. Vanessa stared at them. "Unlawful arrest and coercion. Is this how you do your job?" Garrett shrugged. "You're guilty. Simple as that." She tilted her head. "And how do you think this ends for you?" Owen chuckled but hesitated. "You have no idea who you're messing with." Vanessa's gaze sharpened. "Neither do you." Garrett, irritated, reached for his radio. "Take her in." Vanessa gave a small, knowing smile. "Yes, let's do that." The car sped away, water splashing onto the pavement. Their attempt to intimidate her had failed. Vanessa wasn't afraid. She sat still, wrists cuffed, but her mind was 10 steps ahead of them. They thought they were untouchable, but they were about to learn a costly lesson. Owen glanced at her through the rearview mirror, his confidence wavering. She wasn't begging, wasn't angry, just observing. Garrett remained arrogant. "You're calm. Most people would be crying by now." Vanessa met his gaze through the mirror. "Because I know exactly how this will end." Owen scoffed. "Oh yeah." She tilted her head. "You two are going to lose everything." Silence. Garrett tightened his grip on the steering wheel. You've got guts, I'll give you that. Especially with those cuffs on. Vanessa tested the cuffs. Looks like your department doesn't do thorough background checks. Owen narrowed his eyes. What's that supposed to mean? Vanessa leaned forward, the passing streetlights casting shadows across her face. You just arrested Supreme Court Justice Vanessa Hayes. Absolute silence. Owen blinked. That's not possible. Garrett clenched his jaw. You're bluffing. Vanessa smirked. Am I? She watched them falter, their confidence cracking. Owen shifted nervously. Garrett, we need to. Shut up, Garrett snapped. Vanessa tilted her head. Something wrong, officer. Owen paled. This is bad. Garrett tensed. Only if she can prove it. Vanessa spoke slowly. Turn on the radio. The dispatcher's voice crackled through the speaker. All units, be advised. Supreme Court Justice Vanessa Hayes is missing. Last seen at Willow Oak Cafe. Possible unlawful detainment by police officers. Do not engage, report immediately. Owen Mercer froze. Garrett Whitmore gripped the wheel, his face drained of color. In the back seat, Vanessa allowed herself a small smile. She didn't need to call for help, the system had already found her. The car jerked to a stop. Owen stammered, this can't be happening. Do you have any idea what you've just done? Vanessa's voice was low but heavy. False charges. Unlawful detainment. If I hadn't said my name, how far would you have taken this? Owen swallowed hard. We didn't know. That's your excuse. Garrett hissed through his teeth. Don't act like some saint. People like you always think you're above the law. Vanessa slowly tilted her head. People like me? Silence stretched between them. Owen trembled, staring at the radio like it was a ticking bomb. They were the suspects now. The entire city was searching for Vanessa. Owen whispered, desperate, we have to fix this. Vanessa met his eyes through the mirror. And how do you plan to do that? Let you go. Call it a misunderstanding. Vanessa let out a short, dry laugh. A misunderstanding? Garrett gritted his teeth. We're not doing that. The air thickened. Vanessa could see it. Garrett was cornered, and desperate men were dangerous. Owen's voice grew urgent. Garrett, listen to me. We need to turn back. Garrett didn't respond, but the way he gripped the wheel said everything. Then, Garrett Whitmore let out a cold, humorless laugh. A mistake. He finally turned to his partner, his face a mix of disbelief and contempt. Don't you get it? There's no going back. Owen Mercer swallowed hard. We don't have another choice. Garrett slammed his palm against the steering wheel, making Vanessa flinch despite herself. Choice? There's always a choice. And that was when Vanessa saw it, a shadow flickering across his eyes, something dark, something wrong. The realization hit her immediately. He wasn't taking her to the station. He wasn't letting her leave this car. The vehicle swerved suddenly away from the police station, away from downtown. The streets grew darker, the buildings more sparse. Owen Mercer's panic became visible. Garrett, where the hell are you going? The older officer didn't answer. Vanessa took a deep breath, keeping her voice steady. Officer Garrett Whitmore, you are turning a career-ending mistake into a disaster. Garrett Whitmore clenched the wheel, his eyes flicking to the mirror. Do you have any idea how many people I've arrested and no one cared? Vanessa responded instantly, her voice firm. I do. I've read their case files. He smirked, but it was forced. But you're someone. Vanessa tilted her head. That bothers you, doesn't it? Someone like me sitting on the Supreme Court. Garrett Whitmore flared his nostrils but remained silent. Owen Mercer reached for the radio, his voice shaking. Dispatch, this is. Garrett Whitmore moved fast. He yanked the radio from Owen's hands and slammed it against the dashboard. A sharp crack echoed through the car. Pieces shattered and fell. Owen Mercer's eyes widened, his breath coming in sharp gasps. Oh God. Vanessa knew time was running out. She locked eyes with Owen Mercer, her voice calm but razor sharp. Officer Owen Mercer. He turned to her, face pale. This is your last chance. Do the right thing. Owen Mercer hesitated, his gaze flickering between panic and regret. Vanessa held his stare. Do the right thing. A split second passed, and Owen Mercer made his choice. Faster than Vanessa expected, he unlatched his holster, drew his gun, and aimed it directly at Garrett Whitmore, the man who had once been his mentor and partner. "Pull over, Garrett Whitmore," Owen Mercer ordered, his voice shaking, his grip tightening on the gun. Garrett Whitmore glanced at the weapon but clenched the steering wheel tighter. "You don't want to do this," Owen Mercer panted. "I don't want to die for this." Garrett Whitmore chuckled darkly. "You're already dead." The car sped into the darkness, heading toward an abandoned industrial zone. Vanessa inhaled deeply, her voice steady. "Owen Mercer, you have a choice." Owen Mercer swallowed hard. I didn't know he'd go this far." "You always knew," Vanessa said gently. "You just never questioned it." Owen Mercer wavered. Garrett Whitmore's patience wore thin. "Put the gun down." Vanessa stared directly at Owen Mercer. "He won't stop. If you follow him, your life is over too." Owen Mercer's hands trembled, then suddenly he cocked the gun. "Pull over, right now." Garrett Whitmore clenched his jaw, his eyes flicking to the rearview mirror, locking onto Vanessa's gaze. He knew he had lost. He slammed on the brakes. The tires screeched, throwing Vanessa forward. Owen Mercer held his gun steady, his hands no longer shaking. Garrett Whitmore smirked. "You're a dead man." "Shut up. Get out of the car." Garrett Whitmore slowly opened the door and stepped out. Owen Mercer followed closely behind. Red and blue emergency lights flashed against the empty street. Vanessa clenched her fists, ignoring the sharp sting of the cuffs. She had to get out. Outside, Owen Mercer kept his gun raised. Garrett Whitmore chuckled. "You think they'll just let you walk away from this?" Owen Mercer swallowed hard. "I don't care." "You do." He lunged. A gunshot rang out. Vanessa kicked open the door, slipping out of the car. Owen Mercer and Garrett Whitmore struggled. A second shot fired, hitting Garrett Whitmore in the shoulder. He collapsed, clutching the wound. Vanessa straightened, her hands still bound. "It's over." Police sirens wailed, lights flashing. Backup had arrived. Garrett Whitmore knelt on the ground, gripping his bleeding shoulder, his face twisted in pain. He had lost control of his power, his status, his arrogance draining away along with his blood and dignity. Owen Mercer trembled, his gun still aimed at his former mentor. "Stay down," he gasped, sweat beading on his forehead. Vanessa stepped forward, the fabric of her judge's robe fluttering in the wind. The cuffs bit into her wrists, but she didn't need a weapon to command authority. Garrett Whitmore sneered. "You think this changes anything?" Vanessa's voice was cold. "I don't think. I know." Police officers swarmed the scene, dropped the weapon. One of them barked at Owen Mercer. He hesitated, then obeyed. A lieutenant froze when Vanessa spoke. "I am Supreme Court Judge Vanessa Hayes. I was unlawfully detained, assaulted, and nearly killed. Remove these cuffs, now." A deadly silence settled over the officers. The lieutenant fumbled with the key and unlocked the cuffs. Vanessa rolled her wrists, then turned to Owen Mercer. He tried to stop Garrett Whitmore. "He's not innocent, but he's not the one you should be arresting." The officers turned to Garrett Whitmore. "You have the right to remain silent." Vanessa leaned in, whispering, "You're about to learn what it really means to lose." The news exploded. Garrett Whitmore was indicted, his career destroyed. Owen Mercer cooperated with authorities. And Vanessa, she returned to the bench. On her first day back, as she stepped into the grand courtroom, the entire audience rose in silence. Not out of fear, not out of obligation, but out of respect. And respect. Because justice had finally been served. The story comes to a close, but the issues it raises remain as relevant as ever. We realize that justice does not always come immediately, but with enough determination, courage, and faith in the truth, justice will ultimately prevail. Vanessa Hayes did not just fight for her survival, she became a symbol for those who have been trampled by corrupt power. She showed us that even when pushed to the edge, as long as we stand our ground and refuse to back down, we can still turn the tide. The message here is clear: no one is above the law. Those who abuse their power to oppress others may believe they will never face consequences. But the truth is, justice always finds a way. And those who dare to stand up against injustice, whether as individuals or as part of a movement, can create meaningful change. But the real question is, what will we do in 2025 to drive change? By 2030, will racism still persist? Or will it continue to lurk in the shadows of society, causing tragedies like the one in Vanessa's story? The answer does not rest with one person alone, it rests with all of us. Starting today, we can speak out against injustices, no matter how big or small. We can support those who fight for the truth, hold people in power accountable, and ensure they do not abuse their authority. Over the next 5 years, we can join organizations that protect justice, educate future generations on the importance of ethics and law, or even become part of the system like Vanessa to change it from within. But the most important thing is your perspective. What do you think about this story? Do you believe that justice always prevails, or do you have doubts? Have you ever witnessed or experienced a similar situation in real life? Can we build a fairer society in the next 5 years? Share your thoughts in the comments, because conversations like these are the first step toward a better world. As for me, this story is not just a lesson in courage, it is a powerful reminder that each of us has a role in protecting justice. Vanessa was not a superhero. She was an ordinary person with extraordinary resolve. And that means any of us can do what she did if we dare to stand up. But do we have the perseverance to pursue justice to the very end? Or will we allow injustices to continue unchecked? The answer lies with you. This story is entirely fictional and created for the purpose of raising awareness. It highlights issues of responsibility, justice, and the importance of treating people with respect and dignity. We strongly oppose violence, prejudice, and injustice in all forms. Viewer discretion is advised.